Chuck, would you mind taking the microphone around? Would you? Thank you. It's on.
Only if you want to, I think. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure. Safe to say, don't you think? They were going to try to wear small gloves. I don't know if they did. And Tom, Jenny said she was going to order some more books, so I don't know where they are with that. In case
They're
they,
coming.
I think so, because I told her how many signed up. Lisa told her. So I think she ordered two more. I'm assuming it doesn't take too long. And maybe here's one, I don't know.
What made him a hero? I read a thing about John Wayne one time. It was in an interview. They asked him what he did during World War II. He said, "I made movies. I made westerns, and never spent a day in uniform." Was that what you said? Yeah, it's the only time I ever spent, was in uniform. Was in a movie.
Well, we are in a church where everything starts on time, so it's 7 o'clock or 7:01. So we'll start. Let's start with a prayer. So everybody, get in the prayer posture, whatever that is for you. Feet on the floor, head in the clouds. Sense of presence here. Dear Lord, we ask your presence with us. We know it's always here, but we will attune ourselves tonight even more so that we might believe beyond the fear of death, that we might instead believe in life not only of the body, but of the soul, and life everlasting. We ask the Holy Spirit to bring us courage, attention, and devotion. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen. Well, my name is Tom Baker, and I'm here to talk about death. When it was announced that I was going to do this class, which is more of a book study than a class, someone yesterday said to me, "Don't you think it's a little dangerous for you to do this class?" And I said, "Why do you think so?" And she said, "Well, when Connie gave the class, on the Journey of Souls by the same author that the Destiny of Souls is, Connie died." And I said, "Dangerous?" They said, "Oh, yes." "You better get your affairs in order, Tom." But I took issue in the word dangerous. Death is not dangerous. It is completely safe. In fact, I'm fond of saying that the most exciting day of your life probably will be the day you die. It certainly will be the most revelatory day of your life. And you'll find out that everything that you dreaded about the end of your life was false. And that actually the end of your life is the beginning of a brand new life. A life of spirit, of joy, even of ecstasy. A really good time. Now, I'll be talking out of this book. We'll be reading out of this book, and you'll have questions and insights out of this book. This is The Destiny of Souls. This is his second book. His first book was The Journey of Souls. And his method is this. Michael Newton is a psychologist. He is not a psychic. So he didn't get his information from the ethers or from the Akashic records. He got his information from people that he hypnotized. He has an induction, that is a hypnosis introduction. When you put a person under hypnosis, it's called an induction. And he has an induction that's very, very deep. It takes about an hour for the person to get really hypnotized. And you have to go that deep in order for the person to go back to another life and then end that life and stay with the afterlife. I myself do past life regressions and have had a little tiny bit of success in going into the death between life sequence. But usually people just kind of say, I see the light, it's warm, I love it, and that's about it. That memory is very deep in us. Now, when Michael Newton first started this, he did not know what to expect. What he found was that these journeys into the between-life state were very consistent. People did the same things. One after another, people did the same things in these regressions. They would go into back to a life, and then they would go into the next life, and they would do the same kind of similar things. And then he got very interested in the details of what they did. Now, in the first book, it's sort of a general look at life after death. This is a more detailed look at it. So we're gonna go into that. Tonight, I want to give just kind of an introduction into what death is about and what the main stages of the after-death experience are. But first of all, I would like to know what your questions are about death, if you have any. Does anybody have any questions about death, or about life after death, that they'd like to hone in on, or like me to hone in on, as this discussion goes on? Or are you just curious? Yes.
Is the transition scary?
Sorry.
Also, are you taping this? Are you going to have a CD afterwards?
Are we going to have a CD afterwards? Not a CD afterwards. No, we're not.
Then that means I got to take quick notes.
Okay. Archiving it as a video. So you'll be able to download it. Is that right? As a link. Okay, okay. So is the transition scary? Okay. Richard?
I was curious to know if his case studies, of course they were, the people had to be alive. So these were people who died and then came back somehow?
He goes back to a former life that
Oh.
the person lived. He goes into that life. First of all, he takes them back into their childhood. Then from their childhood, he goes back to another life that they led. Then he takes them to the end of that life, and they make a transition into the death state, into the between life state.
So they're kind of remembering how it was when they died in their previous lives.
Yes, they are.
So reincarnation's a big part of all of this. And
Yes,
it's all-
reincarnation is
it's a given.
it's a kind of given. Yes. Yeah, everybody seems to have come back. Yes.
Does the author contend that there's no hell?
No, there's no hell. the, all your friends are right here. If there's a hell, it's here. This is hell. Yes. I was embarrassed one time as a priest when I was talking about heaven and hell and were we going to go to heaven and did you want to go to heaven and were you going to go to hell and all that. The Catholic Church has a slight obsession with heaven and hell. And a man stood up right there in church and said, "Father, I've been in hell for years." And I was discomfited by the fact that everyone was nodding their heads. Yes. So, any other questions that you just have on your mind before I kind of go into this? Yes, Emily Ray.
Will we know our loved ones when we die? And
Oh, yes. We really will know our loved ones. This is, in fact, you may be met by a loved one, and you may not, but you will know them. You'll say, "Oh yeah, the reunions are just fantastic." Yes. And by the way, just to go on and answer your question, I don't have to wait to answer it. The transition is not scary at all. It's not at all scary. It's much harder to get born than it is to die. If you think about getting born, it takes from 1 hour to 25 hours or so to bang your head against that birth canal. So you're born with a misshapen head and a flat face. So you've been through it. No, Mom isn't doing great either. That's right. It's hard for everybody around. So birth is much harder than death. Death is easy.
what about the suffering? Last February, I lost my best friend of 62 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, what do I want to say? She was the most faithful of Christian ladies.
She didn't deserve that.
And I know that she had told me that she didn't fear death. In fact, she even told her daughters as she was lying on the bed. But what she told me was she didn't fear death, but she feared the pain.
And she did go through some pain for maybe a month.
Yes.
You're looking for a question?
Why did she go through that pain?
Yeah.
Why do we go through the pain that we go through is a question. Why is there human suffering? Is one of the big questions that this book does not answer. Okay, it's for us to answer. Part of human suffering is our attitude. Eckhart Tolle has said, pain is mandated, but suffering is voluntary. So you can have pain, but you don't need necessarily to suffer. Suffering is a kind of state of mind rather than the state of your body. That's a quick answer, and it's a smug one, so don't let it exhaust the field. Anybody else? Yes, Paula.
Can we communicate with people here when we're on the other side? And if so, do you have any idea how?
Yes, just open your mouth and speak. They will hear you. I suspect Connie is here tonight. Probably in one of the front rows. The front row is almost empty, so she's probably in the front row, probably wondering how I'll do. And so, Connie, we're glad you're here, and I hope to carry on your tradition. So she can hear me. They can hear you just fine. It's not that, see, death is not the big deal that it is for us, for the people who die. They don't lose a sense of continuity with us. We lose a sense of continuity with them. But they don't lose that with us. So they're not that upset by it. I know we want them to be. Don't you miss me, Mom? And Mom essentially says, I am so happy and so busy that not really, no. Also, here, love is a rare thing. It's something we cling to, something we treasure, something we hold tight to us. On the other side, in the spirit world, love is the most common thing there is. There's a sense of everybody being joined and everybody loving everybody else. The special love that we have here is not known there. PMH Atwater, who had 3 near-death experiences, she came back after her 3rd near-death experiences, and she started inviting people home to her house for dinner, from the grocery store, from the street, from all kinds of places. And her family said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I've been over there so much, I love everybody. And her family had to explain that over here, we just love a few people and ignore the rest. Now that's probably where we're trying to get beyond. In some ways, we're trying to get a state of mind here that is run-of-the-mill over there every day. Just as Jesus said, you know, if you invite the neighborhood, if you invite everybody you invite to dinner, you know, go to the hills and dales and streets and invite everybody in. And we all look at that and we say, boy, it'd be awkward, wouldn't it? And it would be awkward, but it would be kind of an adventure too. So, and it would be more like the other side than kind of the way we carry on here. Anybody else? Yes.
Once you pass over, is there a life review?
There usually are 2 life reviews. One you do almost right away, and then the other one you do a little later on. And then you go over your life review with the Council of Elders. There is no judging in the life review except by you. The person will tend to judge themselves. The person who directs the life review with you will be very encouraging. They'll point out what you did right rather than what you did wrong. Our sins come to mind immediately, our shortcomings, our mistakes. That's what we focus on. Oftentimes, the reviewer will help us see what it is we did right, our loving acts, and often very small things. Just little acts of love are very treasured on the other side.
Tom, you make it sound like we still look like us and we're still in our bodies.
You can
Yeah, like-
look the way you want to.
Yeah, okay.
That's for purposes of recognition. Sometimes you'll just be a ball of light. But most of the time you take on the appearance of the way you were at about 30 years old. That's kind of a popular thing to hear, isn't it? Yeah. So people will recognize you. You just look a little younger. You're at the vital time of your life. Yeah, but you don't have to do that. Yes,
Since I have the mic.
you have your own microphone.
Yeah, I have a question. So I've read Brian Wise's work,
Yes.
and so my understanding, but never Michael Newton, so I'm excited about this. And my understanding is that this in-between time is just a time of rest and bliss.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, how long do you get to stay in the in-between?
Well, that's a good question. You get to stay for often up to 100 years, sometimes more than 100. You're not forced in any forceful way to come back. So you can stay longer even than you are supposed to. The afterlife is very, very free. There's not the rules and the obligations that we have here. So now, but the thing about it is that time is always now. So there's not the sense of the passage of time that we have here. So 100 years can seem like a month or so.
And kind of a follow-along to that one is that, I always felt a really strong connection with my dad after he passed. I
Yes.
feel his presence a lot.
Yes.
But over time, so it's been 21 years now, and
Yeah.
over time that connection doesn't feel as strong, his presence doesn't feel as strong. So I wondered, has he reincarnated, and does that account for why?
Not necessarily. No, the departed soul, the deceased, is usually very concerned with the grief of the person left behind, and will try to contact them, especially in dreams. But sometimes, as you'll read in the second chapter, I believe, in different ways with different energy patterns, to get your attention, just to know that you're present. The big thing in the beginning is to know that the relationship that you had on earth continues in through the afterlife. But after a while, they get busy reviewing their life, and also our problems don't look quite as catastrophic to them as they look to us. There's kind of a wise and loving distance which grows up after a while.
Tom, I have one more quick one. I'm sorry.
right.
I say this jokingly because you make it sound so great over there.
It's great.
But people who commit suicide, are they treated any differently? Or
Yes.
do they go to a different place? Or
They kind of go to a different place. They're talked to by their guides usually pretty sternly. The idea is that they give you, it depends on the situation of the suicide or the circumstances of the suicide. But if a person just kills themselves because they have a broken heart, the guide sort of says, well, you had a perfectly good body that we gave you, and you threw it away. You threw away the opportunities of that life. And also they review that life, and they look at all the other possibilities they could have had they made different choices. So there is kind of the idea that you don't take your own life and you don't take another life. And that living here is quite a privilege. It's very lucky to live here and to have the experience. I'll get into it a little bit more when I talk, but it's, yes.
Okay, my question is that when they're there, and maybe our souls would maybe there for hundreds of years, it's a beautiful place everyone is loving. What is the motivation to be reincarnated to the earth plane? You know, that you hear things that the souls know that there's more we need to do, or we need to correct, or
Yes.
to deal with some karmic issues. And I'm wondering I don't know if any of that's true, and I know as I finished read
That's
the
all
book
true,
more.
yes.
Oh, okay. And so when you come back, are you in another higher place that's beautiful? Because when you first go, it's really beautiful. You connect with people you love, if not physically. I figure energetically, they're there. I'm thinking I'll energetically connect with my mom, if not really seeing her. But why would you want to leave and come back to something that I know what's the motivation to come back where there's going to be so challenging on earth?
Yeah.
I mean, they may come back at this time and witness what is happening to America and change their mind, And I'm just curious, what makes people want to come back?
Well, the answer is kind of long and complicated, so I won't go all the way into it. But Edgar Cayce said we come back to face ourselves. Face ourselves. And the earth experience is experience. The after-death experience is reflection. So this is like a school or a workshop here. This is where the action is. The other side is reflecting upon the action, how we did. The great motivation is to be one with God. It looks like that the way we develop character is through opposition. In other words, we like challenge. My father used to say, you'll learn through experience or discipline. And he looked at me then, kind of with a level look, and he said, and you're going to have a lot of experience. Because I was the kind of kid who said, I want to see for myself. I want to try it out. Well, we are those kinds of kids. We want to experience it to learn it. You could say we want to take the long way around. This consciousness looks like it was something invented by us, the earth consciousness. We're kind of in charge of that earth consciousness, as the Unity Church would say, and we can change it. That's why we come to here on Sunday morning, to change our consciousness. Well, that's the whole idea. But we seem to want challenge to do that. Think of a lifetime without challenge. What happens? We get lazy. Exactly. You get spoiled. You get aimless. There's nothing. We get in trouble. Yes. Yeah, we do. We kind of complain about this place, but if you look at it, we keep doing the same thing over and over. We want to learn through challenge. Emily Ray, you have one more question, then I'll get started.
When we're getting ready to transition back, do we have a choice on where we come? One of my thoughts is, oh my goodness, suppose I come back in iguana or Laos or Afghanistan or so do we get a choice or do we go up one? I'd read somewhere that sometime our life presently here now depends somehow raises us to our higher level if we've lived the good life, and we will get to a life that is just as good or maybe better. And when I say better, I don't mean more money or anything like that, but more or less where we can do more good, or if we've been bad here, do we go down a level and maybe be born again in Iran?
You seem to be very geographical about these places. When we first come over, or when we're thinking about coming over, when we're souls, okay, when we've been in the spirit world a while, we are extremely optimistic and idealistic. So when we look at the earth, we look at the earth in terms of possibilities. We look at what can happen. And so we can even go into what would be perilous kind of environments. And if the right people are there, we're fine with it. One thing human beings do, and they do it really well, is adapt. So, you know, if you're in Iran or Iraq or those places, you would adapt to that. And the whole life that you live is not so much about politics or environment as it is about the people you're with. So that's where the karma is. That's where the action is. Well, they look miserable on TV, but then almost all of us look miserable on TV. There's quite a bit of joy in the world, no matter what culture you live in. Yeah. Okay, let me kind of get started here. As I just said, life is, from the soul's perspective, amazing. It's full of potential, full of opportunity. We experience life sometimes as extremely difficult. It can be disappointing, it can be hellish. That's why death is always, or not always, but most of the time, a happy ending for people. We are moving towards a very happy place. Now, we have spiritual goals for our lives, and according to Edgar Cayce, we meet about 50% of those goals. According to the Course in Miracles, however, according to what Helen Schuckman was told, we, in the last 100 years, 200 years, have not been going as well as we had before. We're not advancing as quickly. And so this is a time especially when new spiritual stuff is coming to us. When the old religions are kind of fading away and new approaches are coming. Now, some of the goals that we have are overcoming vanity, overcoming jealousy, being more honest, be more loving, exercise forgiveness. Those are all things that we do, and we, as I said, we do them in the context of our relationships. And they can be done in very small acts. It looks like here, from an earth perspective, that everybody tries to be special. Everybody wants to be famous. You want to be a celebrity. You want to be somebody who's important. In the spirit world, the important person is the servant of all. The person who loves the other person, not the person who conquers the other person. The spirit world is very orderly and gentle, and our lives on earth are planned very carefully. Now again, what we remember on earth is usually the bad things that happen to us. Actually, a lot of good things happen to us. We get a lot of insights. We get a lot of love. We get a lot of wisdom from life. And those situations are planned pretty carefully. As I said, we seem to grow through challenges. So what we might call hardships in life are actually opportunities. They're ways to get strong. They're ways to strengthen ourselves. We will tend to meet people who we've ignored in other lifetimes. We'll put ourselves in situations that we didn't want to be in a lifetime before. Maybe we thought that people who were poor were stupid or no good or something like that, and we'll be poor and we'll have that experience. The spirit world wants us to have lots of experiences. You want to have lots of experiences. Your soul does. Your soul is very engaging. It's not avoidant. Now, the human being tends to be rather avoidant, but our souls aren't that way at all. Our souls want to get right in there and do it. Now, things on earth are usually harder than we expect. It's kind of like every summer I notice that there are insects. During the winter, I forget that they're insects. And spring comes and summer comes and the mosquitoes come out and I think, oh God, that's right. They're insects. Well, that's the way we feel when we get incarnated. We didn't have any problems. Everything was a discovery. And then we have problems here. So we're kind of surprised when our egos are more powerful than we remember. When we're over there, our egos are repressed. They don't enter into our thinking so much. But here, they control our thinking an awful lot. Now, as far as the ways, I can't think of the word, the order that we come in when we die, we're first met by someone, most often a spirit guide, but also a parent or loved one with the guide in the background. Now, your guide is a very important person in your life. Very important. But most of the time, we don't think much about our guides until we have an experience where the guide is highlighted. Has anybody ever met their guide or known of their guide's existence? Margaret, you have. Why don't you take a trip back to Margaret? Margaret, what was that like to meet your guide?
It was, I can't even think of the word. It was, I guess in my humanness, I'll just say amazing.
Okay.
To know that there is a spiritual being assigned to you that will help you and guide you through this lifetime. And to get to know them and to be able to call on them,
Yes.
you know, when you're in this earth plane.
Yes.
It was, to me, it's like when we know that God is love and we are love, to know that this being is there, it's all a part of love. You know, it's like you're never alone. But
Right.
we have to know that we're not.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was amazing. Yeah, it happened in astral travel. And I was up like on a cliff, and I see this person there. They weren't saying anything or doing anything, and they were on a horse. And they were dressed like in ceremonial dress. And so looking, there was no speaking, but telepathically I was saying, "What is your name? Who are you?" And then he told me who he was. And I said, "And what are you?" And he said, "I'm your guide." And I said, "Forever?" He didn't answer. When I said, "Are you forever, my guide?" He didn't answer. But it was like I wasn't asleep. It was a real experience, but I can't describe it, but it was just phenomenal.
Were you sleeping?
No, I wasn't asleep. Because sometimes I see things when I'm awake, you know. So, no, I wasn't asleep. But when you're astral traveling, you're in a different mindset. You're in a different vibration. Yeah, or for me anyway, yeah, a different vibration.
Right. A different state of mind.
Yes.
Yes. Well, oftentimes it's your guide that comes to meet you. If another person comes to meet you, say your mother or your father or your wife or your husband or a child, the guide will often stand in the background. And then you'll meet your relative or who it is. And if you're a young soul, not very advanced, the guide, or a child, the guide will orient you, kind of show you around, let you know that everything's all right and everything is okay. If you've had a really tough time in your life, the guide will tend to let you vent. Very oftentimes, this material has shown me the goodness of venting. Like you need to tell somebody how hard it's been, how tough life is, how unfair it seems. So oftentimes the guide will listen to you as you vent, even before you have your life review or go to your group. Then you kind of vent with the guide. I had a experience with my guide with a psychic. My guide, so-called the psychic said, was Thomas Merton. If you know Thomas Merton, the monk. And when I was sitting there, she said, "Well, I have your guide now, and his name is Morton, and he's a monk. Do you know of a monk named Morton?" And I said, "No, but I do know of a monk named Merton." She said, "That's him." He's shaking his head. He's saying, yeah, he's nodding his head. He said, "Yes, that's him." And at the time, I was living in a house by a Catholic church. And in the front of the house was the Thomas Merton Library. Isn't that something? That was really something. And she said, "Do you have any questions for Thomas Merton, your guide?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I have two questions. One, will I ever be a success? And two, will I ever be married?" And she says, "Oh, he likes those questions." He's laughing and laughing, and he says, "You will always be a success at anything you try. So don't be afraid to try things. You'll always be a success." And I said, "Well, what about getting married?" And he just starts to laugh again. I said, well, yes or no? And he laughs and he laughs and he laughs. She said, he won't stop laughing. He won't answer you. So I was to become a celibate priest and all of that. So that was in my future. I didn't know anything about that then, but that was in my future. So I've sort of felt close to Thomas Merton ever since then, and I expect when I go over that Thomas Merton will be waiting for me. Now, if you're an advanced soul, and I would hope I'm an advanced soul, I'm kind of counting on that. I may be terribly disappointed because the advanced souls are in indigo. All the souls have colors. And the beginning soul is in white. Then you go to yellow, then you go to gold, then you go to green, then you go to blue, and then you go to indigo. And I'm hoping that I'm in indigo. Because I had a psychic tell me that this was my last life. Isn't that great? Yeah. She said even I didn't have to come back this time. I was a volunteer. Whoa. Okay. Yes.
Know for how many years, but I would think that you and Thomas Merton overlapped in your. He died well after you were born.
Yes, he did. He died in 1968. I was born in 1950.
Yeah. And I always had the notion, whether it's from reading Newton or whomever, that guides and others like that were not overlapping in the same lifetime. Apparently not.
Well, he said, now this was the psychic, he said to the psychic that he took over from my other guide about a year and a half previous to when I had this reading.
So that actually answers a question I had earlier, that you could have a guide that you know in this lifetime. Now, you didn't know Thomas Merton until you didn't know him as a guide until that was revealed to you.
I didn't know him until after he was dead.
Huh?
I didn't know him until after he was dead.
Oh, okay.
As to talk to.
Yes,
I knew of him. but I
of him.
didn't-
Even when he was announced by your psychic that
Yes.
this was your guide.
Right.
So you didn't know exactly what in the world he was doing there or whatever, but you knew he was a famous mystic, a monk, I presume. Yeah. Okay. So that opens the possibility that people in this room may be the guide for someone else in this very room.
Probably not.
No, probably not, but
Probably
expand
not.
on that, yeah.
Well, I think that most guides don't incarnate anymore. They've stopped incarnating. Some do, but they're of an advanced state, so they're not carnating much. So I assume Thomas Merton, that was his last life, so he's not incarnating anymore.
He just wanted to take on one last difficult shot.
That's right, and I've given him a run for his money. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that, a spiritual guide, can a guide be someone that? Oh. All right, I'm trying to formulate this question, but can you have a guide that in a spiritual form, like, say Margaret is sitting next to me and she could be my guide and I'm not knowing it?
Probably
Say-
not.
Probably not?
Probably not, no.
Okay, so those people that, maybe I've watched too much TV, but what if if somebody is in a horrible accident and all of a sudden this person comes out of nowhere, you know, and helps them, and then you never see this person again, what is that?
Well, that's a kind of miracle. That's it could be an angel that helps you. Angels don't incarnate, but they sometimes appear. It could be a soul. There are lots of different kinds of souls who can come to Earth and make a difference in our lives. We seem to have, according to the psychic Sylvia Brown, we have 5 times in which we could leave in a lifetime. So it might be that at that time the person had decided not to leave and so needed some special help to stay here, and that somebody in spirit or an angel came and helped them.
So I have a follow-up to that. So how, when they're up in the, in the non-human form, spiritual, how can they actually like be part of your life? Like Linda was saying, like a close accident where you just thought, oh my God, I could have just got killed, but something made me do this. Is
Right.
that the guide, or do you think
That's often the guide.
okay?
That's often the guide
So
who
they
does
can
that.
actually be part of this plane. They can
Oh,
actually
yeah.
be physical.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get lots of hints. Well, sometimes, he doesn't talk about guardian angels, but he does talk about guides. So maybe when we thought about guardian angels, that we were really talking about our guides.
The guides can give you unctions, or how does that work?
Unctions?
Like, how does the guide, can they like make you think of something?
Yes, they can help you do that.
Right. So if, let's say you are in a life or death situation, you think, or you suddenly realize, and then you're saved, and it's a thought that you had that saves
Yes.
you. Then,
Yes.
So your guide can communicate with you
Oh, yes.
by giving you like unctions or
Uh-huh.
thoughts.
Thoughts. Yes.
You say this might be your or somebody, the guy told you it was your last go-around? So what happens after your last go-around? What do you do if you're no longer being reincarnated?
Well, I will probably train to be a guide. A lot of people train to be guides. That's kind of a popular job on the other side. As we go on, we will find there are other jobs that souls do. There are specialties that souls take on. Like he talks about an ethics soul, a soul who studies ethics. And so he comes to Earth and does ethical things, or really tries to bring an ethical awareness to the Earth plane. Yeah, he needs to go to Washington. He may be the whistleblower, right? But also, when you come over, karmic lessons are reviewed. The soul can get contaminated by these circumstances, especially by malicious acts. If you hurt somebody, if you hurt a lot of people, or there are extreme bodily conditions, the soul will be affected. And your energy gets all messed up. And so you won't go to your group right away. You'll take some time out with your guide and you'll talk about things. It's kind of a counseling session. And you'll determine whether something was intentional or accidental, whether there were mitigating circumstances, that kind of thing. So evidently, when you've done something wrong, it's not that you're judged, it's you're kind of rehabilitated. The idea is that you think about what it was and you see the reasons for it and what you can do better and all that kind of thing. So there's not punishment. Rest and solitude is kind of how the soul comes to itself. Sometimes you may have felt this in your life. Has anybody ever felt that they were just kind of tired from the inside out? Yeah. That's, that's the world working on your soul. That's why we talk about toxic environments. Well, that is literally true. A toxic environment can really take your energy away. It can cause the soul to withdraw. And instances of sexual abuse or different kinds of abuse, the soul will often withdraw from the body and watch what's happening from the ceiling. A lot of those people become psychics. That's one of the consistencies with psychics is childhood abuse. Because they get out of their bodies so early in life. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Well, the first place you go after you've talked to your guide is your group. That's a group of about 3 to 25 people. And you probably know members of your group here in the earth. They're the people that you have rapport with. People that you just feel something familiar about. They just understand you and you understand them. You think alike. You finish each other's sentences. It's just a real good contact or link that you have with them. They're probably a member of your group. We spend our time with a lot of people that aren't in our group during the earth. And that's one reason why we feel lonely. Because we don't have people around us that are kind of like our soul family. Sometimes in a church, groups will, the groups will come together and you'll feel a sense of familiarity, say in a church or a school or a place like that. I remember I hypnotized a man who went back to another life. Then he died, and then he went to the spirit world, and he went to his group. And he saw in his group a teacher that he'd had in college that had taken him in and made him a part of his family. He was a very lonely kid at college, and the family was just everything to him. It just saved his life. And he was in his group. And the man just started to cry. He was just sobbing. He was so happy to see this man. So going back to your group is one of the most emotional things that you do. It's really a great thing, and they often have a party for you. They meet at a temple or in a meadow, or see everything. You can have any kind of environment that you like. You can imagine it. You build it with your mind. So you can have a Greek temple, and then you have a little party there, and you're back with your gang. It's wonderful. When you incarnate, you leave behind about 10 to 30% of your energy on the other side. Sometimes people bring too much or too little energy in, and so they're not as resilient as they could be. They don't bounce back as quickly. They're sometimes too sensitive. We talk about the sensitive person. That person may not have as much energy as they need to be here. But if you should die while someone is still incarnated, you can still visit them in your group. You visit their energy. You visit the 10 to 30% that's over there. It looks like they're sleeping or they're just very quiet, but you can still visit them. There's almost always a sense of the schoolroom in the spirit world. There's a lot of learning that goes on. And learning is paramount. As I explained before, Earth is the workshop. It's where it's the action. This is an action planet. And the spirit world is where we reflect upon the action that we've done. And oftentimes, things take a long time to learn. Newton tells of one person who spent 4,000 years trying to conquer jealousy. That's a long time for jealousy. But we're so determined. We keep coming back. We keep trying and trying and trying. Evidently, Earth is the slow way around, like I said before. That we want to do it through challenge rather than through discipline. Usually we will learn faster even here if we'll pay attention to spiritual teachings, if we'll discipline ourselves to meditate every day and to pray every day and to do those things. That helps speed up the process. It looks like so much of spiritual intervention is about speeding things up, making virtue happen more quickly in you, because it takes so long to do things sometimes. We could go faster. We could actually go to God very quickly if we would let go of the private, separate self. They say in the East, no self, no problem. We look back at that and say, no, I want myself. I'll put up with the problems. But that seems to be a choice that we have every time we live, every time we die, every day, when we're here and when we're there, is that we can let go of ourselves. As I said before, the colors of souls go from white for beginners, yellow, gold, green, blue, and indigo, which is what I hope to be. There is a hierarchy, but it's not a hierarchy in power. It's a hierarchy in awareness. It looks like the souls, the younger souls, are just like that. They're more immature than the older souls who are more mature. Now you say, well, what makes a soul mature? Experience, yes. However, some people do a lot of experience and not much learning. We've known those people here. You may be one of those people. Oh boy, I've been through everything and I still don't know what it's about. But supposedly the advanced soul does kind of know what it's about. They've learned in all those lifetimes. It's kind of like you're in the 12th grader, the indigo soul does not feel superior to the second grader, the soul in white, but they're wanting to help that soul. They're wanting to assist that soul in their learning and their advancement. There's tremendous kindness on the other side. Any questions so far? Yes, Judy?
If you have a color when you're on the other side,
Yes.
we all have an aura, even when we're here.
Yeah, that's different from the color of the soul.
Okay, so if someone can see auras and they see your aura as green, that doesn't mean that
No.
you're a green person up there.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. Now, you notice that about us? We're very concerned with our status. So now that I've said that the indigo soul is the advanced soul, you all want to be indigo souls. I can empathize with that. I too. Yeah, just hang with me and you'll get indigo pretty soon. The soul works hard when the soul decides to work hard. It's all up to you. They do not force you to work hard or to incarnate into difficult lifetimes or to difficult bodies or with difficult people. They don't make you do that. You decide to do it yourself with advice from your guides and your council of elders and perhaps your angels too. He doesn't talk much about angels, but I think they have something to do with this. Let's see. Once or twice between lives, we visit our council of elders. And when we're visiting the council of elders, it first can feel like it's judgmental. That's probably the first thing that came to your mind when I said council of elders. In other words, they're going to judge you. They're going to see what's wrong with you, what's bad about you, and all this kind of thing. They don't do that. You feel the presence of the source. They meet in a kind of semicircle. The elders are up front, and there's a kind of hole in the ceiling kind of sense where you feel the source shining down on you. And the elders ask you questions about your life. On the other side, it's all mind reading. It's all mental telepathy. So no one has to speak. No one has to make a noise to be understood. So they ask you about your life. And they mainly try to encourage you instead of judge you. They do ask you about your behavior. What was behind it? One of the things that come up with this, I've always thought that intention was the most important thing. Evidently, behavior means something. It's not just your intention. It's what you actually do. And it's fairly easy to be overcome by the earth. It's easy to be overcome by dishonesty, by prejudice, by hatred, by judgment, by conformity. There's kind of the encouragement to think outside the box once we're here, to not go along with what everybody else is thinking, to think original thoughts, and to try to think spiritual thoughts that are not what everybody else is thinking. Yes. Wait.
So what is the point of going before the Council of Elders? What purpose is being served by that?
They're able to help you see into your true soul, your true intentions, your true actions, where you are. It's a kind of reorientation session. And they give you advice. They tell you what they think you need to work on, what you haven't worked on for 400 or 500 years, what you could concentrate more on, what you could focus on.
In what you can work on when you're on the other side, or what you can work on when you reincarnate?
When you reincarnate.
Okay.
It looks like character is not developed simply through insight. It's developed through struggle. That's kind of an interesting idea. And they're talking about when you're struggling here, what to keep in mind, what to remember. Remember is an important word in spirituality. We sing about it in our song when we come in. We want to remember who we are. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to remember who we really are, as opposed to the kind of self that we've made up, sometimes called the false self. Okay?
So when you die, you're obviously still of the earthling thinking.
Yes.
And then do you start evolving as you're there longer?
Oh, sure.
But when you first get there and you're in front of the elders, am I thinking like I'm thinking now, or have I already started to evolve because I'm not in my body anymore?
Great question. Great question. What comes up is that you go before the elders twice. Most people have an elder session twice. The first one is soon after you get there. And that's when you're still thinking more in your earthly life. If you've done atrocious things, you meet with your guide about that. And sometimes you go into solitude, even before you go into the council of elders. But the first time you're before the council, you're remembering more of this life. The second time you go before the council, you talk about the life that's coming up, what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve in that life. So it's kind of looking back the first time, looking forward the second time.
So, Tom, I read that the first book that he wrote,
Journey of Souls.
Journey of the Souls. And if I recall, people like that have the tendency to murder, to really hurt people, they go into a separate place. I mean, everybody's categorized in the good, the evil, the bad, and they stay there until they learn the lesson, so to speak.
Well, yeah, there's evidently something called energy regeneration, where if you're, he tells the story of the man who got blown up in battle. I don't know how many of you have read The Destiny of Souls?
The Destiny?
Started it, okay. Some of you have, some of you haven't. I'll just tell it. There was this man that got blown up in World War I. He got a shell, blew him up. And his energy, he didn't have time to get out of his body before he died. Now, most of the time, what happens if the plane is crashing, we get out of our bodies before the impact. Isn't that a nice thing to know? Yeah. So we get out of there. But he didn't have the chance to do that. He stayed in there, so his consciousness was blown up as well, which meant that his energy was in all these little blocks. And the guide came to him, and she wouldn't get very close to him because she didn't want to contaminate herself with his energy, because it was full of killing and war and hatred and fear and horror and all those things. So she kind of steps back, and then his guide comes along and gives him like a spray of energy, like a fire hose of energy that helps him to gather all of his little blocks of energy back into a whole so he can go on. So that's part of the regeneration. When people have done atrocious things to other people, their energy is all twisted and messed up, and so they need to have that energy either rearranged, or some people, like they've done just atrocious things over and over again, they have to kind of be redone. But that's a rare thing to happen.
So those people, do they come back? I mean, is there if not to come back, can they stay there?
Yeah.
I mean, stay on the other side rather than come back here.
Yeah, they usually they can come back here. Usually it's after they've been rearranged, but they can come back here.
But I mean, say if they choose not to come back here, do they have that choice? Can they just stay in the spirit?
He's not so sure. They think and stay in the spirit world, but they seem to be isolated. If they come back here, they have to face so much karma that it can be discouraging for them to be reincarnated.
So they stay.
They stay on the spirit side. Yeah.
Are they isolated?
Yes, they are.
I have another question. When I was going to Tidewater Unity, Joyce Kramer had classes and on Tuesday, and one of the classes I attended, we were talking about such things as this, and Joyce made the comment that if you have an addiction of drinking, alcohol, drugs, whatever, if you don't get rid of it in this lifetime, you carried it over to your next lifetime.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why addictions are so damaging. They kind of get all the way to the soul. So the energy gets polluted or contaminated.
Okay, one more question. This is kind of complicated, but if you could stay up with me. You said that they're thinking, your guide's telling you that this might be your last go around here.
That's what a psychic told me.
Oh, the psychic, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And if this is true, I wrote this down so I wasn't getting confused. You've been told that, and you're no longer going to reincarnate. And there are other souls like that also, I presume. And children being born here that are reincarnated into a baby and another soul. Is this how the world's going to end, that everybody is finally going to get their last lifetime and everybody will be on the other side?
Kind of, yes.
Okay, so that's what we call heaven.
That's what we call eternity.
Eternity, okay.
So that's that would be everybody would be one with God again.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what happens when a baby or an infant dies?
He doesn't talk about that. There are no cases of infants dying that he talks about. So I don't know. I guess the soul goes back and looks for another opportunity. That would be my hunch. It's when you before you come in here, there is the sense in which you look for a body and an opportunity. So if that opportunity gets blocked, or you're going to be what's called a filler soul, just that you're there just a short time. Usually souls get, when a soul dies as a baby, that soul is there just to help the mother and father love each other, to give them a sense of the value of life and the sanctity of life. So then the soul goes back and looks for another opportunity. That's my hunch. Wait a second. Okay.
So that just kind of made me think of, so in each incarnation, when you die, you don't really remember all of your other past incarnations?
No. You have a memory block.
Okay. When you die. So when you're on the
Oh,
other
no,
side,
when you die, you remember everything.
all of your past
When you're born, you
incarnations.
have the memory block, but when you die, you remember all your past lives.
So if an infant dies, wouldn't that soul, it wouldn't matter.
No.
Right, so your soul is going to not, the age thing, so if an infant dies, their soul is going to be coherent or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're gonna remember who they were and all that. Okay, so that kind of answers the question then.
Yeah.
All right.
Tom, I was wondering about the soul when he's there he's on the other side. He is preparing, examining his experiences, and preparing to work on some aspect that he wants to improve upon.
Yes, indeed.
But he's probably encouraged to do that, but he seems like he's not forced into anything.
No, he's not. Or
But-
she's not.
On the other hand, he or she is desiring to come back to Earth or wherever with the purpose of cleaning up this or that or issue.
Yes.
So he generally the soul has a notion of what he wants to work on.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. And all of that is not pushed upon him.
No.
On the other side of that coin, that soul that had lived what we might call a horrible, extremely evil lifetime, he conceivably would want to do that some more. Is there anyone preventing him from coming back and wreaking more havoc?
No, I don't think so. Well, there might be. There might be. If he's not in shape to be incarnated again, there would be, the forces would say, no, he can't come back.
As I recall, he discusses evil in
Yeah.
some similar way, that there are evil spirits of sort. I don't know if I'm using the right word. I don't want to apostrophize evil. It's an evil entity of some sort.
Well, he says there are no evil spirits.
Well,
And there are no evil spirits
Or
that he
twisted.
talks about.
or twisted spirits.
You can get twisted, your energy can go twisted, but there are no evil spirits.
No, I got that. But the effect could be propagating evil.
It could be, yes. It's not quite as, see, here we're extremely interested in that idea.
Yeah.
They're not very interested in it. Most of the time, people are not propagating evil. It's kind of a rarity, actually.
So there, love and truth do will out.
Yes,
Wonderful.
yeah.
I'm just getting all kinds of questions now. Well, I actually have two. One real quick, that just kind of made me realize. So does it mention anything in there about ghosts?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Second question. Maybe you could follow up on that later, but
Okay.
the main question I had was, on the other side, is there a sense of masculinity and femininity?
Not so much, no.
And when you are reincarnated, can you be reincarnated as a female or a male?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And sometimes you get incarnated as a male and want to be a female, or you get incarnated as a female and want to be a male. So it depends on you. We usually have a favorite sex that we like to live. And depending on who you are as a soul, you like that sex. So when you get over here in the other one, you might not want to be that way. So you would be homosexual, or you'd be trans, or you try to be another sex because that's more comfortable for you.
Do you get the choice before you come over?
Sure,
Oh. And then when you get,
you change your mind. We do a lot of mind changing when we come over here. I mean, just think about it. When you came in, think about what it was like when you were a 4 or 5 year old child. You thought life was amazing. Then you got to be 13. life stopped being amazing maybe. You started having a lot more problems. You started thinking, do I even want to be here? Do I want to be in this life and in this body and this circumstance, et cetera, et cetera? So we do a lot of changing once we get here. That's why the choices that we make are so important. And if we can listen to our guide, that's why meditation is extremely important, because your guide can communicate with you most easily in two states that you're in. One is meditation and the other is dreams. So the guide can get to you and give you messages that are important to you and help you with your decisions. If you're just reacting to the world all the time, then you're not probably going to grow very much. You're just bouncing around. Okay? Yes.
So what can you do before you go to sleep to get your guide to come to you?
Well, that's simple. You just ask the guide to come to you in your dreams. You kind of incubate a dream. You say, God, whoever you are, talk to me during my dreams, or take a quiet time during the day and ask the guide to come in and talk to you. Even when you're driving, you're driving and listen to music and all that kind of thing, when you're a little bit hypnotized, the guide can get in there and talk to you.
So would it be the same thing if you wanted a loved one to come to you?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Just ask.
Just ask. They're very cooperative over there.
Okay.
Paula?
When you reincarnate, I can't remember if I read this somewhere or maybe somebody said it to me. Do you like get a preview of what that life you're choosing is going to be like? So why would anyone, first of all, sign up for a life that's going to end in a really violent or suffering kind of death, or choose to be incarnated with someone who's terribly disabled or something like that?
Karma. That's the short answer. In other words, things you need to work on through different conditions. Sometimes Michael Newton has the case of a person who, in every lifetime, they had a chronic illness because they wanted to be a healer. And they felt like only by experiencing everyone's sickness, or every sickness that there was, could they be the true healer that they wanted to be. Now, what you got to remember is that it's like the insects coming back in the summer. You don't remember quite how brutal this life is. You think of it as kind of like a 2-week camping trip, in which you're gonna have some hardship. It's gonna be rough. You're gonna have a father who's not so great, and a mother maybe who's not so great either. Brothers and sisters who are peaches, one of them's in your soul group and that kind of thing. So it's a mixed bag you're going into. But it's all to learn, to have experience, to be, in a sense, the other person. To experience what it's like to be everybody in the world. See, what we're really stuck in ourselves here. They're not stuck in themselves over there. Yes, sir, Dave.
One of the issues I've always had with these choices that the
Mm-hmm.
soul makes is it seems that there are many people here who think that's an excuse to, well, you chose that horror, you chose that crime to happen, you chose to be raped, you chose to be,
No,
and
no,
I'm
no.
thinking, and while I hear this,
Yeah.
and my thinking is, and I'm thinking of the 8 vows, and the first vow of compassion and care for each other, and that's only the first bow, those things still come into play, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes. Because you, again, you are so idealistic when you come in. You're so good-hearted. You want the very best to happen, and you want to do the very best. And you want to learn everything you can from every experience that you have. That's the intention of the soul. Here, we think we're supposed to be happy because we want what we want. That doesn't seem to be what life is about. It's about always learning. It's about wisdom. It's about empathy. It's about imagining what it is to be hungry, to have AIDS, to be another color, to be another person.
So in that sense, it's still our duty as individuals to help alleviate as much suffering in others as we can.
Absolutely.
And to help stop horrors from happening to people, not writing it off as, well, that's their karma and they got to go through that.
No, not a bit. This is he talks about people who've said, he asks what kind of planet this is, and they say it's a severe physical planet. In other words, the aliens that are supposedly here every now and then, they're not here on vacation. Okay? They're here doing research on us, maybe, but this isn't a vacationville. This isn't like, oh boy, we're going to Earth. Can you wait? Huh? So, yes.
Tom, by way of when we arrive, we change our minds. I'll never forget the earliest memory I have. I'm still in diapers. I'm laying supported by little blankets that I couldn't roll around, receiving blankets, I guess they call them. And I was screaming my bloody head off it just seems like it goes on and on and on. And I remember, I still have a clear picture of the room I was in, but I must have been objecting to something, like changed my mind, but I never have figured that out. But similarly to Reverend Paula's question, I remember in the autobiography of Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, recalls where he's reading the newspapers and the news during World War I. And he's considering all the thousands of people just being wiped out and murdered, just masses of people dying together. And he remarks, if I got this right, he remarks not just about the sadness or the horror, but he remarks about, wow, so many people have chosen to come to an end this way. As if I don't recall him saying, chose this life to come to an end, but he really spoke of there having a choice in the matter. And choice is life. Right.
Evidently, we have more choice than we think. There are accidents. Edgar Cayce said there were accidents, but he said most of it's pretty planned. It's set up in a very careful way. Yes.
I just remember you saying that, we all come here, because I was wondering, why do we want to come back? Because it's wonderful there. And you said, to get to know God, to be one with God. And so we might choose a life and have the outline of that life, but inside that life, there may be some things that are going to be very, very painful. And it's our job, like we sing on Sundays, to remember why we're here. And that painful thing can be transformed into a growth opportunity.
Yes,
so
there you got it.
Every single thing that we experience is a growth opportunity, not to be angry, not to withdraw, but to sort of turn the other cheek and see what am I to learn. I am hurting, acknowledge that hurt, but then tell yourself how you're going to grow through it. And, that's how I'm looking at, from what you said and, some of the own experiences I've had that, hey, whatever's up, I have to grow. I know I can grow because there's something that tells you you don't have to live in that forever in your head.
Right. Right.
You can have another existence, even if it's not a physical one. You can have another existence, and I think that's what you said. Very
Yes, and no matter, again, no matter how bad your life is, that will end. It will end with a glory, with ecstasy, with bright light, and love and warmth, and it'll be great. Richard?
I'm having a little trouble with the idea that it's all planned out ahead of time.
Well, it's planned out in an idealistic way.
Because you said that the person that's been raped or something, they didn't choose that. Or
No, they didn't choose
they
that.
didn't know about it before they came in.
The
But
way-
you also said that we choose, that we choose that if we needed to learn something from it. And then you said it's all planned out, so I'm thinking, where's free will?
The mistakes that people make are not planned. People make mistakes, make a lot of mistakes. So the difficult, controlling person, you may know you're going to have him as a father, but then he starts drinking, and he starts molesting you, and that's not planned. You didn't plan for that. No, he didn't either. In other words, we plan for the very best outcome. The very best. Everybody who comes in does. And then it gets screwed up a lot.
And there's no QA that can check this out. Shouldn't we be better than that, better at that by now? I mean, like, you go into a trance every decade and you get a little, what's up? This is what we were planning to do in this life? I mean.
It's a very good idea.
And speaking of that, where is divine mind when you're in this spiritual place, and you have these elders and you have these guides? I guess I'm not getting a sense of where God is.
Well, God seems to be somewhat distant.
Okay.
God is not just up there in your face, although people have the experience often, right as they die, of being with God, of being with the experience of God, and feeling very warm and very loving, and they never want to leave. And I've had that with clients myself. In fact, I've finally had to kind of interrupt that sort of love fest that they're having with God, and say, we need to finish up. We need to So, but yeah, but then it's like you go down to where you really are. You go to the level or the status you're really in, as far as your advancement goes, and that has a lot to do with wanting or not wanting to give up your sense of an individual private self. Part of what we're doing when we incarnate is that we're getting used to being everybody else.
It's a journey to oneness.
It's a journey to oneness, yes. So it's kind of like you never want to be ashamed to be anyone that you know or anyone that you see. Because if you are, you're going to be them at some point.
Oh, dear God, I could never ever be like somebody I know in the White House. No way. Please tell me that's not.
No, you won't be anything like that.
Please.
No. And people in public life, we don't know who they are. I know they have this and they have that, but we don't really know who they are. And some people are fit to do a job, and some people are not fit to do a job, and that's about what it is. So it's not that they're. See, we tend to think that people are good or bad, and they're just not. They're lovely souls, every single one of them. Yes.
One thing you mentioned was about the concept of time, and I think that's something to remember. Even if it's a miserable life, it seems to last forever. Time is a man-made construct, not a
Yes.
spiritual construct. So it could be a blink of an eye, a lifetime here from the vantage point of a spiritual perspective. So we think who would want to ever do that? But when you look backwards, it's a brief period of time or experience versus what we think lasts for eons or whatever. I think that
Yes.
plays into it.
Life seems very long, except at the end, if you've ever noticed that. Yeah. Karen? Oh, we got one.
So if you have
Thank
a
you.
life that is full of suffering, I mean, say
Yes.
you're burnt and can you just decide to check out?
Check out in your life?
I mean, not like kill yourself, but just like say, okay, I'm going to take one of those 5 opportunities here.
Yeah.
And let fate well, not killing yourself, but just will yourself. Like I'm just tired. My body's tired.
Right.
I
You just
wanna
stop
go.
willing to live. There are people who do that.
But then when you reincarnate, do you have to kind of deal with that again because you chose to check out?
Depends on your attention. They're very understanding of the terrible circumstances that we sometimes get ourselves into or find ourselves in, and they understand why someone would commit suicide or just wanting to stop living. So they understand that.
Because some lives, even though we all think our lives some lives really do seem a lot worse than others
Mm-hmm.
in our view. But I'm talking about physical things like being in pain and.
Right. Think of it like this. The guides, the elders, the people over there, when they look at your life, it's like a parent looking at a child's life. You have that much compassion for that person. There are no real strangers on the other side. We all know each other. We're all very familiar with each other. And people are very understood. So it's not like you keep thinking, oh, I got gypped again, that thing. It's not so much like that. Yeah. One of the things that's interesting about souls is they have real character to them. You're a certain kind of soul. I talked about the ethics soul. They're warrior souls. They're souls that are teacher souls. They're souls that are rescuer souls. I was talking to a psychic once. I talked to a lot of psychics, by the way. But I was talking to a psychic once, and she was talking about these larger groups on the other side. Now, Newton doesn't talk about that. But she said that there was a large group of souls that was, and they were in lots of soul groups, but their soul groups were a member of this larger sense of souls, and one was the Jesus group. And I, knowing my arrogance and my self-centeredness, I said, well, I guess I'm one part of the Jesus group, huh? And she said, oh, no. No, but your wife is. I said, what? And they said, oh, yeah, the Jesus souls, they're souls that are like the shepherds. It's called the shepherd group. And they go out and they're kind of on the front lines. They kind of go out there and deal with people the way they are and help them, get back in the race and get back in normality and functionality. I said, well, what about me? And she said, well, you're in a group where you've been a priest, you've been a nun, you've been a monk, you've been a teacher, a librarian. You're in the protected group. You're like, you've been in temples and schools and libraries and protected places. This is a protected place. It's like this. See, I'm acting true to form here. And you go into my office, and it's very, I have plants everywhere, and it's very green and peaceful, and I could play music and all this kind of thing. So everything is very gentle and very soft and low impact. That's what I want out of life. That's evidently what I want out of every life. Now, you can choose not to work very hard in your life if you want. He tells the story here. There's one case he has of a woman who says, I just skate by in my lifetimes, and that's the way I like it. In other words, I don't live very hard lives. I don't grow very much, but it's all right. I don't suffer very much either. Yeah. And everybody says, fine, great, that's what you want to do. You're not berated, like, you need to grow faster. You need to do better. That's from our schooling. That's the way we were treated. Yes, Judy?
Okay, I'm loud even without this.
Okay.
In the creation process, when our Creator, created, and then the brother and the Creator created the next brother and the next soul and the next soul. Okay. In that process, are there any souls that never incarnate to any plane?
I don't know. I can't say as I know. The only cases that he has are people who incarnate. So all the people that come to him have incarnated, of course. That's the people he hypnotizes. But they don't talk about anybody who just doesn't incarnate. Now, you don't have to incarnate on Earth.
Well, I know you don't have, there's other places,
Oh yeah, there are other places, other planes. There's something called mental planes in which you can incarnate on, a mental planet. This is a physical planet, so there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of feeling, there's a lot of sensation. We have a lot of that here. On a mental planet, there's not much of that. The mental planets are usually easier than this kind of planet. It's where it's mostly thought. It's mostly intellect. And our planet is a little different. And this is from another book. What's the name of that book? Far Journeys by Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe used to get out of his body, and he used to kind of go around and meet other people, people who were out of their bodies too. And where was I going with that? Oh, the mental planet, yes. And he said that some planets were much easier than others. And the mental planets are easy because they had mental telepathy. That's what I was going to say. They had mental telepathy, and a lot of the physical planets have mental telepathy too. We're one of the few planets that do not have mental telepathy. He said that the use of the human voice is to sing. That's what it was originally for, and then you communicate telepathically. But because of the poles and the magnetic stuff that is around the Earth, we can't communicate telepathically, so we have to do this with language. We communicate horribly. I mean, it is hard to communicate. It's hard to get a point across. I mean, my gosh, I'm sweating. So it's not you, it's me. But it's hard to communicate on a planet like this. So we're one of the harder planets to be on. But we're the only planet, evidently, according to Robert Monroe, that where we have a sense of humor. We are the laughers of the universe. Isn't that something? That we're the ones that laugh. And they evidently come and study us, trying to figure out what we're doing, just as you all are laughing. See, they go, what's going on? The universe is very serious, evidently. Yeah. So. Yes, we have laughter and we have suffering. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's maybe it is. Maybe it's our way of telling each other that we're friendly, that there's no harm, that it's all right. Yes, Peggy needs.
I just wanted to know if you've heard of anything about advanced souls like avatars. I read a book maybe 40 years ago about the strangers among us, and very enlightened souls come to Earth and maybe exchange souls with someone who's already incarnated to help get Earth or the world in a direction that a more positive direction or whatever. But do you think anything like that is? I think the author's Ruth Montgomery.
Walk-ins.
Yeah, Ruth Montgomery. The book is called Strangers Among Us, and that some people who maybe like a Gandhi or some of the other avatar type people, souls actually came down to be the guides for Earth, for we Earthlings. You've heard of, I'm glad someone else, I was wondering if my
He
memory.
takes that up. Michael Newton takes that up in this book.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I look forward to it.
He
Read that
says that he has never experienced anybody who was a walk-in. That's never been a part of his experience. I've never experienced anybody in hypnotizing people that were walk-ins, and I don't think it's true. I don't think that happens. I think the avatars just get born and they grow up and avatar about. Yeah, it is possible. Yeah.
I don't know what their research was based on. How were they getting hypnosis or just spiritually was in tune, was it, psychic and was able
Well,
to get
it was
out?
very, what she was doing, she was very fascinated with Abraham Lincoln. Because Abraham Lincoln was a failure in just about everything he tried until he became the president. And so she said he must have been a walk-in. So I think that was an advanced soul. Abraham Lincoln walks out and an advanced soul walks in. Yeah, I don't think it happened. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Oh, now babies come in, or when people come into a baby, they come in about the 3rd month, and they get used to the baby's circuitry, to the baby's brain, and they work on that, and they see what you're doing is when you come in, there's a person there that you're interfacing with. So there are actually 2 of you. There's the human brain, and then there's the soul. And you create a combination personality between the soul and the human brain. Now, you can get a brain which is really stubborn, that you've got to really work with. Other brains are placid, easygoing, all that kind of thing. You remember the stories that come out of people who get organ transplants, especially hearts? They get the heart transplant. There was this woman who got a heart transplant, and she got it from a teenager. And once she got the heart transplant, she had this taste for beer that she'd never had before. And she wanted to drive fast cars. And she loved the smell of gasoline. And so it was theorized that was from her heart, That was from the teenager that she got a heart from. So our brains affect who we are and who we think we are in the earth. Isn't that fascinating? We're two.
So the brain and the baby's body, at about 3 months, they try to merge.
And in about the third month, the soul comes into the brain. And then the brain matures, and the soul integrates itself with the brain.
There are some, I've heard the expression, and I think I had one of my grandchildren were an old soul. You've heard that expression, an old soul. What does that mean to you?
I think that means an advanced soul, a soul that has learned a lot from their experiences. That's what I think it means. Good. Okay. Well, that's about all. We're almost at 9 o'clock. Any other questions that you might have from our discussion? You have one more, Judy, yes.
Okay, if the baby's soul and the baby's brain melds around 3 months, what about late-term abortions, where it's more than 3 months? So when that baby is aborted, does that mean the soul just goes back up and then chooses again to come into someone that would not do that?
I assume so.
Okay.
All righty, everybody. Thank you very much. We have a love offering. Oh, reading assignment. Yes, the first 5 chapters. First 5 chapters. That's 190 pages. You'll hear a lot of what I said tonight in those 190 pages, and we'll take up energy next time and a few more things. Love offering, ideally of $20. If you can't afford that, then put in what you can do. But that's what it is. And you take a check, yes. Unity Renaissance. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yep, Alice and Deb had me thrown pretty much all the time. Yeah, someone else who came out instead. But yeah, that's good.
Go to the Montel Williams show when she was on it.
No kidding. Yeah, Alice Mason and Deb Evans, yeah.
And she told me that this was my last lifetime.
Really?
Yes, and then she told me that I had been in Egypt many, many times, and that I had been with Edgar Casey. I didn't even know who Edgar Casey was back then. But yeah, and she said that we had been together in other lifetimes. I said, how interesting. But I've been following this stuff for years, and I'm just...
I can tell.
Yeah. And I help people with transitioning.
Well, do you?
Yeah, I do. I think it's been maybe now about 13 or 14 people. It's like a ministry for me now to help them not be afraid of what it is. And it's so, and you talked about the God thing, how you have this God connection, how some people, when they cross over, they feel that actually presence of God. I went to Deepak Chopra Center in San Diego, and I had an experience like that, standing on the street with a complete stranger. It was so amazing, Tom. I mean, I was like engulfed in all this white, and I wasn't there. My body was gone. I mean, my body was there, but my energy, my spirit, and I was just in so much love. Because I was very down. I had just lost a relative who had died, and I was just broken, really broken when I went there.
You got out of your self's way.
Myself. It was so awesome. So thank you for doing this class.
Oh, you're welcome, Margaret. Thank you.